Hello, and welcome to the Soul Shaking Love podcast. I'm Valerie Green from CoachValerieGreen.com, and this podcast is dedicated to bringing you the world's expert teachers to help you to build that mind, body, and spirit connection, both with yourself and your true love. And today, I'm really excited to bring back intuitive healer Mary Jo Cranmore. Hi, Mary Jo.
Hi, Valerie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Okay.
Yes, I know. We were like dealing with some technical difficulties, so we're both excited to be here. And today we are going to talk about how to identify a narcissist so that you don't have to be continuing the relationship with one. And so basically, Mary Jo, I shared a little bit about her history in our last interview. So I will put the link to our other interview below this one. It's how to use intuition to attract your soulmate. So that was the subject of the other one. So I'll put that link below. She shared a little bit more about her healing journey in that one, and that she used to attract narcissists. She dated a few narcissists. And we're not looking to diagnose people, but what we're talking about is people who don't have empathy, who don't have boundaries, or who don't honor boundaries, who get really critical and eat away at your self-esteem once they get close to you. Rather than taking responsibility, they blame others. So those main characteristics, I was talking to Mary Jo last time, and she said that the healing work she's done not only allowed her to not be attracted to those kinds of people anymore, but she knows how to ask the right questions when you're getting to know somebody to tell if somebody has those qualities. And so I was like, oh my God, I have to pick your brain. We have to share those questions with the world. So, with no further ado, of course, we can talk about what is a narcissist and why is it bad to be in relationship with one, or hurtful. But really, we just want to get to those questions, like, how do you tell if the person that's sitting across from you has those characteristics? So I'm very excited to pick your brain on that topic.
Thank you, Valerie. I'm super excited to help people not waste the pretty, as my mother used to say. Like, don't spend years trying to figure this out.
Yes.
Okay. Like, that is the biggest thing. Don't waste the pretty. Don't waste the pretty on someone who is really lurking. And, people who, we were just talking about not diagnosing people, and that's for real. But there's plenty of people out there that have narcissistic tendencies. It's a spectrum disorder. So it is quite challenging, especially for empaths, people who, it's like a perfect match, because the narcissist is looking for something called narcissistic supply, which is your attention, your time, your energy, your love, your kindness, your generosity, all of these things that you just believe are important to bring to a relationship. I do not want to crush that out of anybody. But my main focus here, I have a lot of things to say about different kinds of tests and things you can do and questions you can ask. But I really want to say to you, slow down is the sort of umbrella test here, because slowing things down, like, I don't know, painfully slow, but like, keep things much slower than you would normally do them. When you're just getting to know somebody, if they're not part of your circle, nobody else knows them, you have no idea, who this person is or any of their background, because narcissists have a really hard time maintaining long-term relationships. So if someone's in your circle and you might know that, like, oh yeah, they only have this group of friends for a little while and then they move on, and then there's certain reasons to do those things. But if it's a pattern, you're looking for patterns,
right?
Just like astrology, just like a lot of things, you're looking for patterns. And so slowing down is kind of my number one directive when you're starting to date, or when you're looking for jobs, when you're in relationships of any kind. I want you to slow down, because we as empaths and people who have had childhood experiences of people pleasing and over giving, this is something that really hooks you. These people really know what they're doing. So you're wanting to override a lot of this with your belief, especially those of you who are Sagittarians. We believe that most people, or people in general, are like us or are genuinely coming from a good place. And you just don't know that.
Right.
That's a harsh truth. Number one is like, you just don't know that. You want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm all down with that, but just do it from a little safe distance here. Trust the behaviors, not the words.
Right.
Trust people's behavior. And if you start doing that and just looking at that, you're going to be better off. So I think these are the two things I was really talking about when I was thinking about questions to ask. So the first question I usually ask, and it's usually, I don't know, date number 1 or date number 2 or something like that. If we get into some kind of conversation, these must be natural questions. They must not come out of the blue, like in interrogation techniques, please. Okay. So the question you could ask them is, what's the one thing they'd change about themselves? Because there's nothing that a narcissist thinks they should change. Right. So you're going to kind of see the gears mash up in their head. And it's like in a job interview when you try to figure out, like, what is your biggest weakness? And everyone's like, I'm too awesome. Like things like that.
Right. Yeah, right? No, totally. Although the advice that I normally give to people when they ask a question is to have prepared an answer to the same question. Because that's
good point by you.
Developed into me. See. So if I was to ask that question, the answer I would give is like, well, I don't necessarily meditate as much as I want to. And,
right. Don't give them anything. Don't give them anything that they can use. Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's a good answer, because it's something that doesn't have to do with relationships.
Right. Exactly.
It's something about like yourself that, I always cook too much food. I live alone, or I live with 2 other people or something like that. And I cook for an army. I always cook too much food. Like, that's something I really don't like about myself, truly, because I don't like to waste food. Right.
Yeah. And so is what you're saying that if someone is on the narcissistic spectrum, that they wouldn't have anything even like that? Like they would just be like, oh, I'm just too smart. Or
they might. They might, but it's literally, I feel like what you're trying to attune yourself to is a vibe. And that's why I talk about this as intuition work. Right. Because the vibe you're looking for is, that's not true.
Yeah. Like I'm perfect.
Yes. You're going to have to feel the vibe of how true that is. And the way you can kind of test that theory, like, you could ask me a lot about the cooking I do. You could kind of go deep in something. You could be curious about that. You could be like, well, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh God, when I make gazpacho, it's like a giant vat of gazpacho. My mother was a chef. And so she taught me a lot about cooking for large groups of people. Like, I have stories related to this. If you're asking someone who you think is a narcissist, or you just don't know, right? You just don't know. Most people who have empathy or have self-reflection will have said to themselves at some point, especially if you were talking about someone in their 40s and 50s, it might not be true for someone in their 20s. Just like masters of the universe, we're just, we're excited, but 40s and 50s, you've lived a little bit. And so if you can't really put a finger on something, that's a red flag for me. Right. And if you also have an answer that sounds, you're like, that seems like an answer that they made up, or that's something that they would give in a job interview that sounds a little bit too, I would go deep. I would get curious about it. I would go deep, because they won't have stories around it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Ask follow-up questions.
Oh my God. Yes. Please ask follow-up questions. Indeed.
And before you're attached, right? It really, I mean, because the caveat here is once we have feelings for someone, it's hard
Oh yeah.
to ask follow-up questions. So I think this is really important to do before you get attached, right? Like it's kind of like lean in and be like, oh, interesting. So the thing that you would change about yourself is you're too smart. That is really funny. Tell me how that's a problem.
Tell me give me some examples of that. Like, why would that be a
Exactly.
problem? I mean, it's just one of those things where you're starting to, okay, so like when the government tries to figure out if something's a counterfeit, they don't go studying all the possibilities of counterfeit. They look at the real thing and they know it like the back of their hand. They know what something real looks like, feels like, smells like, touches like, all of that. And so you're essentially, you're getting yourself to the place where you're going to need to trust yourself a little bit more, to be curious, to not overlook red flags.
Right.
Because if you can go deep in something, then you're going to get a lot of information. And I think that's ultimately, even if someone's nervous or something, you're like, that was a stupid answer. I'm going to go deep.
Yeah.
I'm going to go deep, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I think that's the way to do it. So pay a lot of attention to what real feels like to you. When you have a conversation with a friend and you ask them the same question, see how they react to it. So you can get kind of used to it. Okay.
Right.
So you know
Ask
that
people
they're like,
you know that are also empaths. What would you
yes,
say about yourself if you could? And then see how they would answer authentically, you know, so that
correct.
you're used to what an authentic answer sounds like. I love that.
Correct. And just get used to the feel of it. It's just like getting used to the feel of what love feels like, what curiosity feels like, what confusion feels like. You're going to have to recalibrate yourself in terms of what honesty feels like to you,
Yes.
what authenticity feels like to you. Because these people are really good liars.
Right.
And so, you know, you're going to have to start to understand that in your own body, what it feels like to you when someone lies to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then,
Well,
so,
remember that. Yeah, remember that.
and what should we do if we sense that we are being lied to?
Oh, well, then right away, I would just say to yourself, this is my overarching advice about slow down. So if you're dating and you have, you know, you've been on a few dates with somebody or whatever, I want you to resist the urge to like fantasize that this is the one.
Yes.
Stop looking for all the ways that this person fits into your life. Don't, you know, this person is somebody that you are going to spend 6 months getting to know. There is no way a narcissist will handle a 6-month time frame without blowing it at some point.
Yep.
They will not be able to do it. So the longer you can, so a lot of what I had done, and this is the second thing I look for, is I kind of disrupt their pattern, disrupt their schedule a little bit. A couple of dates in, because most of the time people who have narcissistic personality disorder, they like consistency. They want to be in control of the room. So they take people to this place for date number 1, this place for date number 2, this place for date number 3. It's very something that they're comfortable with there, and it's on their home field territory. And so third date, if you get that far and you're still kind of like, I don't know, I urge you to, if they say, hey, there's a new place down. Okay. They've been there before. There's a new place, you know, a couple of blocks away from your apartment, which is also convenient, a couple blocks from your apartment. I've been meaning to try it. I wouldn't fall for that. Anybody who you kind of have this inkling about, they've been there before. They're not going to go into something that's not in their comfort zone. I would urge you at that point to say, you know, I'm not really up for that. How about we go bowling? And just stop talking. Let them fill the air. If you're it's a little bit harder The easiest is seeing someone in person.
Right.
Next easiest is when you're on the phone with somebody. The hardest is texting because we don't get the emotional cues. We don't get that. And so a lot of narcissists prefer texting,
Right.
but you're still going to get the gears mashing up when you try to upend the plan.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, what would be the difference between somebody who is on the narcissistic spectrum, how they would react to that versus, somebody who is just has a little bit of control issues?
Right. So someone with a little bit of control issues may push back a little bit. But in general, if they really are somebody who wants to see you and get to know you, this is a person, okay, we all have friends who are controlling. We all have people who in our lives who are controlling and things like that. It's no big deal. Like, we know it, we can see it, but there's other qualities about them that make the relationship rounder and more, that work, right? It works. We all have our things, right?
And they're like willing to work on it too, like,
and they're willing to work on it. But if you upend the plan to that degree with someone who really is on the spectrum for narcissism, they might cancel the date. They will have an outsized reaction to it. They're either going to give you 100 reasons why you should go.
Got it. So they'll try to convince you. They'll be pushy about the original plan. Oh, come on. What's wrong with you? This is wonderful. I've taken other people there. It's incredible. This about it and that about it.
And they just said that there's a new place. So like, they're going to trip themselves up because they're going to try to convince you then.
Right.
And so likely that, your biggest weapons are slow down and stop talking. Let them fill the air. If you know how uncomfortable it is when there's a prolonged silence. And this is really one of those, because I think empaths, I know I'm like this. I'm a let me entertain you kind of person, and I'm a overgiver and oversharer, obviously, right? And so I have to curb that and focus on the task at hand. My job here is you're interviewing to be in my life. That's my job, is to determine whether I'm going to give you my time and attention and open up more to you and share more about my life. And there needs to be a level of trust built very slowly, I believe now, because I just feel like people who have this issue are really good at this. And you also need to get used to people who do over the top things in the beginning, because a lot of times, not always though, a lot of times, you've heard about love bombing, you've heard about this where you get flowers the next day, all of this kind of stuff. And you just have to kind of, curb your enthusiasm a little bit. But I will tell you that 2 of the 3 narcissists that I dated, and I'm alleged narcissist, did not have that problem. They did not love bomb because I'm assuming that they knew that would be something that I would be like, call foul on. But they got that from me, because I was like, had just been divorced and all this kind of stuff. So they kind of adapt a little bit to know that people feel that's too much.
Got it.
Too extra. You're too extra. And I feel like that's, that's how evolution works. We adapt, right? We adapt to surroundings. If this person has been dating a lot, they're adapting. So you're going to really need to be paying attention to what they say, but also their behaviors. Do they match what they say? Behavior over talking every single day.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, that applies to all dating, but especially with narcissists, because they will say something different than what they're actually doing.
Absolutely. And they will, most narcissists or people who are on that spectrum are really projecting a lot. They're saying things to you, they're telling things to you that they themselves are doing or that, they're like, this is awful, this is terrible, but they're kind of like confessing that this is what, if they're trashing their ex, that's another big red flag. I know just with regular people, that's a big red flag. But a lot of times what they tell you about an ex is really what they did.
Right.
So that's something to watch out for. So your job here, I guess the biggest thing is to set clear and consistent boundaries around time, attention, and energy. Because the main thing I feel like with people who are sliding up that narcissistic scale is after you get, if you're dating, 4, 5, 6 dates, okay, now we're talking like kind of deciding whether we want to slide into a little more of a commitment here. And maybe it's physical intimacy. Maybe it's meeting my best friend. Maybe it's, right, those kinds of things. And you're needing to be able to do this, and with a normal person too. You're needing to be able to set clear boundaries, and you're also needing to be able to say no.
Right.
Because I think narcissists hook people who have a hard time with those kinds of boundaries and saying no. So right. This is the test that I think I've heard from a lot of coaches, but it's beyond the best thing you could do, is especially if you're in person with this person. And if you're feeling like, okay, I think I got this person, then you might be feeling a little bit, ready to push this boundary with them. The smile test, which is to smile at them and say no to something. Smile and say no and see how they react. You're going to have to stop yourself from explaining. Do not explain. Just say, that doesn't work for me. Because what I think does get overlooked a little bit is it's not just empaths who have these kind of visions of grandeur about relationships when we're starting to get to know somebody. We're idealizing them, and they're idealizing us too. They are absolutely idealizing us too. So what happens is, when they start to see that you are a real human being that has flaws and imperfections, and heavens to Betsy, you do, that's when they're going to start pulling away, or they're going to start doing kind of terrible things. And if you've idealized them, you are just blowing through those red flags.
Right.
But these first dates, if you can set those clear and consistent boundaries, and it can be about a date, like, you've decided that you're not really interested in like headbanger grunge music anymore. Like maybe in the 90s, you were like Kurt Cobain. Yeah. But like now, maybe not. Maybe it's something that on your spiritual path, you've decided that that's something that just doesn't appeal to you anymore. You don't have to have some big thing. It's just like, I don't know. That's not for me anymore. And they want to take you to some concert that is not for you. Say no. Say, it doesn't really work for me. And then shut up and see what they do. Oh, I've got these 2 tickets. I spent so much money on them. Oh, my best friend's going to be there. He's been dying to meet you. Oh, going to try and push those boundaries.
Right.
And your job is to just be like,
sorry,
I don't know what to tell you, but this is not going to work for me.
I care that you feel upset about it, but it doesn't work for me.
Yes. Because, they do have a fairly transactional mind. So right. The thing is, once you say no to something and you're like, okay, well, that didn't go so badly, you're going to get payback. If it's a narcissist, they need to balance the scale, and then they want to dump you. So there will be a balancing of the scale.
Got it. So, or they'll like try to get back at you in some way, right? So
that's what I'm saying. Like they're going to try to balance
you,
yes.
Right?
They're very transactional. So they have a ledger in their head.
Got it.
If they brought you soup when you're sick, which they would never do while you're actually living with them or married to them, you're going to have to give it back in kind in their what makes them feel good.
Got
And
it.
so empaths we're so smart and so good at knowing what people need. It's like second nature to us. So just be careful, because knowing when you say no, about something, and this person kind of has a bad reaction to it, I want you to, there's like a 5-second period of time when you're really going to see who this is. I mean, this is the ultimate test. Smile, be very polite. Just like, that doesn't work for me. And see what happens. Because a normal person will say, oh, no problem. I can take my best friend and I wanted to go. That's no big deal. Let's just set up another time. Let's set up another time. And there really is no repercussion here. Like, you're not feeling that. A narcissist will make you feel like they've filed it away. They will they will not let you get away without thinking that was a bad thing you just did.
Got it. So they'll like bring it up again and hold it again.
That was a bad thing. You're going to walk away from that feeling like, oh no, uh-oh, did I ruin this relationship? Did I do something terrible and everything like that? But here's the thing. If you say no to a normal person, it's not going to ruin anything. If you get really anxious about saying no, well, that's something to work on with normal, regular people.
Right.
Okay. If you say no to somebody who really is a narcissist, and all of a sudden, like, they go dark on you, like you feel like this kind of rage happening, or they're just like, fine, your loss. You know, they start being kind of nasty and they start doing little weird things. Run. Okay. Because they are now going to try to get that pound of flesh back. They think by you saying no that you took a pound of their flesh.
Got it. And that you owe them.
And you owe them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not true.
Right.
It's perfectly reasonable to say no to somebody.
Right. Yeah. And, I mean, like, if you're dating somebody who, like, let's say they're attached to the concert, they might say, oh, I'm really disappointed.
Yep.
I was looking forward to that, but I understand, we can do something else,
Dating is a laboratory. If you shift your mindset, because I know that I auditioned when I was dating, I was like, I think I'm auditioning for them. You need to flip that around.
Mm-hmm.
They need to audition for you a little bit. And this is not narcissistic behavior, because you're not going to have these same kind of reactions. But you're like, my time is valuable.
Right.
My time is valuable. And, you don't worry so much about like, oh God, I didn't do everything perfectly. Oh my God, I've ruined this. And now this was the one, this was the person, this was the person. Narcissists, or people who are on that spectrum, don't remember stuff about you unless they can get something from you. They don't remember that your grandmother was ill the last time you guys talked on the phone. They're not going to remember that. They're not going to ask about that. If they do, the spectrum, they might be a little bit off the spectrum. They might be, sliding back into normal territory. But this is why my umbrella thing is go slow. Go really slow. People are, I don't know, like, I'll give you an example. I had a friend from high school who went really fast with this guy. They were married within like 4 months.
Wow.
She was in her 40s and she wanted another baby. And that was something he wanted too, which was not true at all. And so he heard that about her and he pushed it. He pushed intimacy. He pushed for that. And she did get pregnant. She did. And so she's like, well, we're just getting married. We're just getting married. And I'm like, oh my God, it's been, within the space of 4 months. And he's actually one of the only people I know who actually has a diagnosis of NPD.
Wow.
Yeah. Most narcissists will not go to the therapy. Why do I go to therapy? I'm perfect. Why would I need to do that? But this guy loved hearing the sound of his own voice so much that he wanted to prove her wrong, that he wasn't one. And literally after the first meeting, he left the room. This was after their child had been born and everything like that. And the therapist stood in front of the door and she said, you divorced that person. You should divorce that person right now. And she's like, I have an infant daughter. And she's like, well, I don't know what to tell you, but that person, NPD, big time. And it was horrific. It really was horrific. And if she hadn't expressed so openly her desire for children, her desire to, and he knew her biological clock was ticking, he used that to hook her.
Wow.
So be very judicious at what you're sharing with people as you're getting to know them. Don't give them hooks into you. You know what I mean? Like, you're really going to have to think some stuff through. And I know this sounds very like, how am I supposed to get to know people if I'm not telling them who I am? That's true. But that's why, again, go slow, because if you're slow about how much you're sharing about your own deep desires or needs or feelings or stories about your family or stories about things, if you're going slow about that, somebody who's on that spectrum will not be able to last without blowing up at a waiter, I had a date one time with someone who, this was a person who brought his press clippings to dinner with me.
Wow.
And this was in February in the middle. So this was a German restaurant, very famous restaurant in Springfield, Massachusetts, and very, very famous. And it was that time of year, it was German food. So that time of year was really the time when it was so popular to go every year. And it was a Saturday night. The place was packed. There were people out on the street, and he threw down his press clippings. Don't you know who I am? And I was like, oh my God. Like, the waiter looked at me and I'm like, gin and tonic. He's like, every 15 minutes. I'm like, yeah. Yes, please. And this is when I was very young, before cell phones. I didn't know how I was going to get home. It was a disaster. And luckily the wait staff was like, we will help you.
Wow.
He was so off the chain bad.
Wow.
Yeah. That was like in my 20s. Yeah.
Wow. But yeah, I mean, and gosh, I'm really glad that you recognized it even then.
Oh my God. Well, anybody who throws a fit at a waiter, at servant staff, I mean, you hear that a lot about, like, pay attention to how they treat people.
Yes, exactly. And if
other than you,
anybody for anything, then
yes,
I'm gonna do that to you.
Oh,
so like red flags to notice. We might want to mention those. But I want to respond to what you're saying now, because I want to just make sure that I'm understanding correctly, because I agree with you that we want to pace ourselves with how much we share in the beginning and go slow. But in my opinion, and I just want to see if you agree, it's not about not revealing things, but what it is about is it's about sharing our desires vulnerably and then asking the other person, what are their dreams for the future? And if they don't share equally vulnerably, right, like indicating a shared value system, then I write it off, so it's like if somebody asked me, like, what are your dreams for the future? And I said, I just want to connect people with their higher selves so that they can trust themselves more and open their hearts and, resolve conflict, to realize that everyone has a positive intention. And I just want to communicate that to the world and, touch people's lives that way. And what about you? What are your dreams for the future? If they...
I think I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I feel like when you get to that place, you should be sharing vulnerably. The thing that stops you from getting to that place with a narcissist is they are not curious about other people.
Right.
So you won't even get that question from someone who is really interested in you knowing them. So you might get the feeling in the first couple of dates that you've heard a lot about them. I did have one experience where I was sitting on a beach with someone. I knew him at one time. We worked together, and then we were both married and both divorced at the same time. So it was like I knew him right from another time in my life. And we sat on that beach and we talked for like 8 hours. But what was happening, and this person was a little bit unique in that I used to be a TV producer. He was a reporter. So his career meant that he was good at asking probing questions. So I don't know that every narcissist is not going to be like that. I mean, that was just kind of over the top. But it was like cataloged, like he knew everything about me and used that in many ways. So just be mindful of that, like when you are letting people know stuff. So this is going side by side with you starting to understand your own intuitive system. You're starting to pay attention to people's behaviors. You're starting to get a little bit of a spidey sense about things with people, that you're starting to, pull back some of your belief systems around everybody's like me. This is not a thing. He was good to my neighbor's dog and things like that, because there's a lot of lore about how animals don't like narcissists, which I will say, I have found that not to be true, because 2, in fact, of the 3 had dogs, and it was because they could completely control the animal's behavior. They were completely the only, and
dogs, because dogs are naturally submissive. So I think dogs would get along with narcissists a lot better than cats would.
100%. I think that's exactly right. And I think that cats would be like, what? You smell funny. Like, dogs would more likely be aligned to love me, very much a kind of empath behavior too. And it's just like, okay, not every single thing. It's like not every single thing lines up with every single person that you're dealing with. So there's not going to be a million red flags, all the same thing for every single person. I feel like there has become some kind of evolution of this behavior to where some people have cycled out of relationships altogether because we see you from a mile away. But the ones who are kind of on the spectrum and who aren't completely ensconced in that, those are the tough ones to tell, because they have some green flags. They really do.
Yeah, and they can fake things like empathy and consideration. And so that's why I agree with you. It really is about slowing down.
Oh my God, yes.
And
oh my goodness, absolutely. And once you are intimate with somebody, you are connected to them energetically. So just really think about that and, go back in your life actually and unhook from people and give yourself that kind of freedom to just like, okay, that was a thing that happened at this time. I'm unhooking from that. You still are energetically connected to those people.
Sure.
It's worth it to do.
No, totally. And how do you recommend unhooking? Just blocking people or?
Well, I mean, sure. For me, and I'll just say, this is just what I do, but everybody has their own way about things. But there's certain people I have unhooked from, and I literally, there's a lot of cord cutting kinds of exercises and things, and I don't mind that at all. But I kind of, in my head, as I was working through my own healing, I saw that as like a weed whacker, meaning you're not really getting to the root of it. You're just taking off the top. And so for me, it took many times with cord cutting to get that to work, especially with someone who is a narcissist or somebody like that. If you have these people in your past, I recommend the visualization. I love to use the violet flame, Saint Germain kinds of meditations, Archangel Michael, protective kind of meditations. And I literally envision like, I mean, this is kind of gross, but it's like a big bailing hook. I literally unhook myself, and then I hear, like, I let it go and I hear ting to ting ting ting, like you hear it go away, like as many senses as you can muster.
Right. Engaging all the senses is what engages
Yes.
the unconscious mind. Exactly.
Yes. Yes. And I love the violet flame because it is about a creative, I use it almost every night when I'm going to sleep. It's like immersing yourself in this beautiful, creative energy. And I have some kind of affinity with Saint Germain that I haven't really explored all that much. So I'm working on that right now for myself. But whoever you're kind of attracted to, if you're attracted to archangels, if you're attracted to just straight up meditation, present moment, meditation, Eckhart Tolle, Buddha, like whoever you're really attracted to. And when you go on these dates, like really use that energy, like Archangel Michael, be with me so that I may, let me know. This is why intuition is so important. Let me know if it's okay to really accept another date. Let me know. Give me a sign. Show me during this date. Give me something unmistakable as you're working with your intuition, and then pay attention. It's a great exercise to do.
No,
And people you're just getting to know. There's no dog in the fight here. You don't have any skin in the game, really.
Totally. Yeah. And that's really what this interview is for. Not if you're already in relationship with a narcissist, because if you are, then that's another, we could probably do a whole
That's
nother
a talk for another day.
How to break up with one because it's very complicated.
Yes.
So, but I mean, I have my own list of questions too that we could ask perhaps.
Sure.
Because I always like to test to see if people have empathy. Even though narcissists can fake empathy, but like I always just like share something not too vulnerable, but like if they ask how my day was, I might be like, oh, well, I'm a little sad today because my friend's mom was sick and I was giving her emotional support for that earlier. And so I'm just feeling a lot of compassion for my friend, and see how they respond. Because if it's somebody who has empathy, then they'll probably respond by saying something like, oh, that's very nice of you. But if they are on the narcissistic spectrum, they'll probably change the subject.
Yes.
That's boring for them.
It's totally boring for them.
They don't like to talk about vulnerable feelings. So they'll probably change the subject. They won't respond with empathy. They won't know that they need to respond with empathy with something that you're not obviously that upset about. So it's like,
no facial clues, right? The facial clues. And also they might make a little bit of fun of you.
Right. Exactly. That's a huge red flag. If they make fun of vulnerability.
Oh yeah.
Because they're that, especially if you're just getting to know them, then they'll really put you down for it later if that's what they do.
100%. That is filed away. They will use that. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. And I think there's other ways to see if someone's personal growth oriented. Like I like to even ask somebody the question like, oh, like what is life teaching you lately? And then of course I would answer that question with something like, well, I am learning how to like what would I say? What is life teaching me lately? I mean, you come up with
I'm learning how to knit. I'm learning how to play fantasy baseball. I'm learning something that isn't too emotional, right?
Well, I think it would have to be something personal growth oriented, but not something too vulnerable, right? Like something like,
that's right.
I tend to not be that great with time management and run late to meetings. So I'm trying to learn how to manage my time better. And, I think I'm doing pretty well with that. That's something where if they criticize me for later, it wouldn't hurt too much. But it's like something, and then ask them, what's life teaching them? I think that's like another version of the what would you change about yourself question.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah. Yeah. But it's a great one. I mean, that's a great way to, I always, because part of my love language is about being curious. I have a lot of air in my astrology chart. It's very much a mental connection for me. So, I literally, which I probably wouldn't say in a date or anything, but I literally am working on being more heart-centered in my conversations with people. I have had so many very cerebral kind of connections with people. And I love ideas, and I love, talking about business and talking about how things work and new ideas and stuff. Like those things kind of get me going. And so if I was to have those kind of conversations and they're not curious, it would be boring for me. So I might even be like, that might just be a red flag in general. It might not be a red flag of a narcissist, but I might be like, oh. So I guess you kind of look at what is your love language? What are the things you really want in a relationship? Yeah. And gear yourself around those kinds of things, because you do want to get to know these people. You don't just want to like weed them out. Like, aha, got you, right? Like you don't just want to do that. But what is a deal breaker for you? Because I feel like empaths, and we do audition a lot for other people to, love me, especially if you had childhood wounds around that. And so instead of that, like, what would be a red flag for you? Just personally, regardless of whether it's narcissistic or not, and that's, for me, it would be that lack of curiosity, which checks both columns. Right. Checks both columns. So it'd be good to really kind of prepare yourself a little bit as you're starting to date, to understand what things might just be like non-starters.
Totally. Yeah. And, I completely agree. And the other thing is, someone on the narcissistic spectrum might ask you a question, but they won't then ask follow-up questions. Like they might be like, hey, what's your superpower? But then when you share it, they'll then share about theirs and then keep talking about them.
Absolutely. They'll always bring it back to them. And, it is a conversational style. And I've noticed sometimes that I will do that. And that's something I have worked on with myself, that I'm like, oh my God, because it's like you say something to me, it brings up a story, and I'm like, oh God, then I'm making it about me. Holy crap. There's zero chance that someone who's a real narcissist will have any self-reflection about those things.
Right. Right. And I agree. I tend to do that too. People who are familiar with my podcast, I can interrupt people, but it's like,
okay, we're human. Yay!
Exactly. And it's like, right, exactly. It's like, people are human and make mistakes and need to work on things.
Right, for sure. And there's no shame in that game. So, if you're not sure after a few dates, then I recommend that, third date, you could kind of disrupt things a little bit and do some, and you be the one, if that's been how it's been going, they're setting all the dates and stuff, you might want to disrupt a little bit and just see how that person handles it. If you have a personality that kids around, and one of the things you really love is being goofy with people, you might want to show your personality a little bit more and see how that plays, right? Because one of my aunts a long time ago, she said, find someone you can be silly with. And that was her personality. And she was definitely married to someone she could be silly with. Yes. And I was like, that's awesome that she knew that about herself when they got married. They were very young when they got married. She knew that. And I was like, that's a great thing, because, as we get, and narcissists rarely have a good sense of humor, rarely. And they certainly can't laugh at themselves.
Right. Right. I mean, sometimes they have a good sense of humor, but they don't have humility. Like they can't stand the joke being on them. Not that
a lot of times it could be like the kind of sense of humor that is cutting.
Right. But yeah, and I think it's also good to, not brush over those red flags. Like if you notice somebody love bombing you, for example, like I've dated narcissists who have love bombed me and told me like, oh my God, you're the most amazing person in the world, and you're the best. And so it's like how I respond to that is like, oh, well, thank you. I'm just wondering, like, what is it that makes you say that? Because we don't know each other that well yet.
You don't even know me. Like, how are you? Like, where's this coming from? I would run the other way with something like, I really would. I really would. So, not be attractive to me at all.
Right. I mean, I've just taken the conversation deeper at that point and just been like, oh, well, what qualities do you see of me that you like? And then I take the conversation deeper and go, oh, well, what values do you have? Like my value system is, unconditional love and wisdom and empowerment. And here's how I know I'm living true to my values. What about you? How do you know you're living true to your values?
Oh, there's no way that they're going to be able to answer that question.
Right. Well, it's if they tell me that I'm the most amazing person in the world, that gives me permission to then go deeper.
Yes, that's a good point.
Kind of questions so that they can then disqualify themselves because
they can then disqualify. That's the goal here, is for people to disqualify themselves. That is the goal. And you don't want to waste a lot of time. And ironically enough, slowing it down keeps you from wasting a lot of time.
No, exactly. And I mean, what I want to say is the goal is to attract somebody who has empathy, who shares your values, who wants to build secure attachment with you, which a narcissist isn't capable of. And so there's a chance that someone can show up and, your spidey sense goes off and you ask these questions and they have CPTSD or whatever, and they're not a narcissist and they do empathy, and then they are the right person for you. I mean, I think that's the goal, but obviously not likely.
Well, I just think it's very hard. And I certainly struggle with this. So I come from my personal experience, is that it's just very hard to not close your heart. And I think that's one of the things that I find with the folks who are on my channel and everything. We talk a lot about this, that how do you remain in because vulnerability is what love's all about. Intimacy and vulnerability, that's what we're looking for. And how do you remain or stay in your heart and still be self-protective and still be your own? This is why the inner child work and all of the shadow work and everything, if you've got a bunch of shadow aspects, meaning like, you just have a lot of things going on that aren't healed, you have a lot of inner child work to do. And those things are going to block your intuition from, you can ask all these questions and you can be like, haha, like they're not curious. They don't have a sense of humor. They're a narcissist. They might not be. But if you're not really and truly doing the work of healing and getting to know yourself, because really what we're talking about is you're learning to trust yourself. That's what you're learning to do. You're not like, I don't trust other people. Okay. It's because you don't trust yourself.
Right. I like that you're saying that. I think this is really important because it's not about going out with this intention to like prove that this person is a narcissist, right?
No.
That is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like, so it's about keeping our heart open and slowing down, meaning that we're not letting the other person push us into deeper intimacy than we're ready for, and keeping our heart open slowly so that we can reveal a little and then ask them to reveal a little. And then depending on how they show up, we either stay open or we say, oh, this person doesn't have the qualities I'm looking for.
Right.
They don't have empathy. They don't have self-reflection. They don't take responsibility. They blame others. I'm not going to go out with them again.
I just feel that I think we have it in our head that we have the choice between this person that's in front of us or nobody. Like we have to make a choice. And the choice means if I say no to this person, there may not be anybody. And the truth is, you might be right. There may not be anybody. But the fact is, it's not about that. It's not, you're not choosing, you're choosing for yourself. And you're choosing your own, this is the person that's going to align with me. This is the person that I'm going to go through life with. You just might need to put a sticker on everyone's forehead that says, as is. You're not, it's not about like, oh, wow, well, I could change that. They have potential.
Right.
Like, no, this person in front of you who's screaming at the waiter, that's it. This is who this is. And
they're going to scream at you eventually.
Yes. And my friend of mine who really, who got married, this happened in our 30s. She was married to him for 6 or 7 years and realized she was saying all this stuff to me. And I'm like, this sounds not good. And I was in my 30s. I was like, it sounds not good. Like, I don't know, but it sounds terrible. And she's like, but I love being married. And I'm like, okay, how about being married to the right person? And she never really thought that she could have the right person. She just wanted to be married. She just wanted to be in a commitment. She just wanted to have somebody, you know, to be with. And I'm like, that's a different story. That's a different thing here. And so what happens is you're looking through the lens of, it's either this or nothing.
Right.
And I'm like, why not just be married to the right person?
Right.
How about that? And she was like, I didn't know that was a choice.
Right. Unfortunately, a choice that could only be had through slowing down.
Yes, correct.
Could have been had by her, unfortunately.
Yes.
Very sad.
I know. It definitely was. It was definitely sad. She's great now, so no big deal.
That's good. That's good.
That was a lost decade there for a while, but she's good now.
Right. And like, we're not about judging people. So it's, and even narcissists, like, I don't judge them. I just don't want to be close with them.
No, it's just like, that's not for me. I don't like pistachio ice cream. No judgment on you. I don't want to be pistachio ice cream. You go away, pistachio ice cream.
Right. Other people can enjoy it, just not me.
That's fine. It's not my circus, not my monkeys. No.
Right. Exactly. And, and then, so it's like, if then the narcissist asks you out again, you just say, hey, I just thank you so much. I don't think we're a match. And then if
learn to say no, I mean, God, that is like the hardest 2-letter word to say, for most of us, because we're people pleasers. We want, we don't want people. What if this is the one, that kind of all that. But again, it goes back to you trusting you.
Right.
Like, no, I don't think we're a match. I think that's a great way to put it.
And I mean, I love what you're saying about keeping your heart open. I think that we could do a whole nother interview about that.
It's so challenging.
You share about that in your newsletter, which I will tell people about. I mean, I think, it's about having a law of attraction practice around what it is that we deserve, and really affirming to ourselves, I deserve to be with somebody who has the qualities that I'm looking for, that shares the values that I share, that wants to build secure attachment, and I know how to do that, and I have the skills to do that, and visualizing that and learning the skills to do that.
Yes.
And working through my limiting beliefs as to whether it's possible. That's what it took for me.
It's a skill. This is a skill. It requires time and attention. This is a skill.
Yep. And so I know that you talk more about how to keep your heart open with your community and in your newsletter and all of that. So, just to like bring all of this to a close, I mean, I think these are all really great strategies, right? Slowing down, asking these questions. You mentioned some, I mentioned some, but it's really about revealing slowly and asking them to reveal slowly, and then intuiting, does the person have the qualities I'm looking for or not, based on their answers, and asking follow-up questions and saying no and seeing how they respond. And if they can't handle it, then they're probably not for you, but it's really just about slowing it down, right? I think that was the main message that you shared.
I think so too. And I think it's about learning how to make consistent boundaries, because the narcissist will always push your boundaries. That's how they're testing you.
Yep, exactly.
Push your time, attention, energy, try to make you do things you don't want to do. If you're being uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form, that is a big no.
Right, exactly. And then to be nice about it, like, oh, that sounds wonderful and it doesn't work for me.
Doesn't work for me.
And see how they respond. I love that, because if you're nice about it, somebody who's not a narcissist will collaborate.
Correct.
And somebody who won't be able to handle it. And so then you'll, over time, see that they can't handle you actually creating your own boundaries and limits, that is not a healthy relationship. So
correct.
I really love that you are making the process so simple for people. And then I know that you do have a lot more information on your newsletter. So do you want to, and your community. So do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Simple, but not easy. Simple, not always easy, but my group, my Pathfinder group, we meet every Wednesday. We go through all these different kinds of topics. We talk about narcissists all the time. but a lot of other topics too. It's an empowering group. It's all about getting to know ourselves. Intuition is my cause célèbre this year. For the 2024 year, I am focusing on helping people understand and trust their own intuition, knowing what that feels like and following it. If you're getting intuitive hits, trust them, follow them, and see where it leads you. Sometimes those intuitive hits will bring you to brand new places that you never really thought were possible. So that's what we do in Pathfinders. In my newsletter every single month, I do a lot of astrology in there because I am an astrologer and I am a, personal empowerment kind of teacher. And, we talk a lot about what's going on with the energetics of things and how to use energy to your benefit. Astrology is not about you being powerless. It is energetics, just like anything else is. Between two people, there's energy between two people, and how you use that and how you open up to it or not.
Right. Yes. And we did talk a lot about that in the other interview that we did. So I'll remind people that I will post that below this interview. And I believe we talked for an hour then too, all about intuition and what does it mean and how do you tell your intuition as different from the voice of fear, and how do you know it's intuition? So yeah, that was a very fruitful interview. So I'll post the link below this as well, so people can get a feel for how you work around empowering intuition. And then if people want to check you out and join your community and get on your newsletter, it's soulrevolutiontv.com.
soulfulrevolutiontv.com. That's fine. soulfulrevolutiontv.com.
Yes, soulfulrevolutiontv.com. Yes, and I will put the link to that below this video as well. And in the
comes from a Bob Marley song. That's how Soulful Revolution came to be.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm ignorant about that. That's awesome. So yeah, I'll put the link below the video or below the show notes if you're listening to the podcast. I will also put the link to the other interview we did. So I'm just excited about your message about intuition reaching people, because I think that it really does. If people can just have the takeaways of slowing down the pace of getting to know a new romantic partner and learning how to access intuition to tell whether or not he really
will help so much
your vision and values, and whether he has the skills to speak your love language or not.
Correct.
Then I think that's what it boils down to. And then of course it's easier said than done, but that's what it boils down to.
Practice. Just takes practice.
Yep. And you are an expert at those skills. So I encourage everybody to reach out to Mary Jo and to get on her newsletter so that you can learn the skills of how to tap into your intuition and how to tell if the person has the qualities to really have that deep soul connection or not. So thank you so much. And I hope everyone has an empowered and intuition-filled day.
Thanks, Valerie.